They say every time you mention it, someone will reinstall it. Deus Ex was originally released in the year 2000. I was pretty much asked to play it by another kid who excitedly came up with a disc and said, "You've got to play this!" And not many things were introduced to me in that way back then. I think the Thriller video was. I didn't need much encouragement to play video games, so of course I played it. One rather old-school feature of Deus Ex is that it may not be easy to get running on modern PCs. I got it to run on Windows 10, and thankfully it's still popular, so you can find instructions. Here's how I got it to work after buying it on GOG.com. So, is Deus Ex still good today? Yes it is. The game is so sophisticated that it kind of grows up with you. I first played it as a teenager, but even now that I'm old, there's always something new to think about. I think most gamers nowadays know what the game is about. It's set in 2052, in a world where conspiracy theories are true, except for the one about the Denver airport. They thought that was too silly. A terrorist group called the NSF have destroyed the Statue of Liberty in a blatantly symbolic attack. You are J.C. Denton, an agent for UNATCO, an anti-terrorist organization. Early on, Deus Ex was intriguing, but it didn't really recommend itself straight away. When you first start, it's likely you'll be bogged down by a traditional linear tutorial, which is a game design move I have a video about. You're likely to have to fiddle with the controls, and even fidget with where you want things to be in your inventory bar. Once you're on the move, you're likely to die a lot, as you're still trying things out. If I were UNATCO, I'd be kind of embarrassed that my new nano-augmented agent was blundering about getting shot and killed.
Another $50 billion down the drain.
You may think the game's graphics look kind of old because it was released in the year 2000. Well, I was there in the year 2000, and I can tell you actually this game looked old on the day it was released. These were times of rapid change, and if you spent too long making a game, it could look old as soon as it was on store shelves. With all that out the way, it might sound as though Deus Ex is overrated or just not that great anymore, but that's not true, it's awesome! The game has a huge emphasis on player choice. You can learn a variety of skills right at the start and solve problems in multiple ways. Though of course, like with any game, it's helpful to know which skills are actually useful and where. The game's status as an all-rounder is crucially important. If you play it as a shooter, you'll find that the weapons don't really feel that good to use, and there's not enough ammunition to go around. If you play it as a stealth game, well, it's okay, but there's better ones. It's only when you realise that all options are viable that the game starts to reveal its greatness. There's a surprising number of toys to play with. There are weapons, different ammo types for the weapons, different modifications you can attach to the weapons, and of course the famous augmentations that power up your character in different ways. The game is also very consistent about giving you choices. I've seen lots of games start with high aspirations and give you multiple choices early on, but quite often they funnel down later because, hey, it's expensive and hard to make that kind of game. Deus Ex always gives you a choice, and that's a big part of the reason it's so consistently engaging. This is also a big reason it's hard to get stuck in the game. While it's unlikely you'll find everything, you're likely to find at least one solution to a problem. You don't need to ask, what am I supposed to do, because there's multiple solutions. I'm not wild about the lockpicking and multitool system in the game. It's basically just two different skills you can upgrade to get more efficient at unlocking physical locks or electronic locks. And it's okay, but it doesn't feel very gamified, like there isn't much to it. You're pretty much just spending a currency that you collect. Maybe it's the fact that using up the resources kind of hurts my loss aversion. They also feel a bit like tools for impatience, because normally you can find a better way around obstacles, but if you're feeling impatient, you could just go ahead and pick the lock anyway. It all makes me feel impatient for using them, and kind of bad for putting points into the skills. And then there's the augmentation system. Now, the augmentations are really fun, and I always look forward to finding more augmentation canisters, but they clearly weren't designed with balance in mind. The healing augmentation is so useful that not choosing it seems to be kind of a challenge run, almost. Like, I can't imagine doing a playthrough where I don't pick it. Every time I do a new playthrough, I look at it and consider doing something else, and then I realise the healing aug is just too good. Some other augmentations are kind of interesting, but they're so much worse than other ones that you don't tend to do the more optional ones. It's all a bit of a mess. Like, the individual augmentations are fun, but the way they're balanced gets in the way of a few things. I kind of feel like the torch augmentation shouldn't use any energy. You start the game with it, and it's useful for peeking in dark corners and stuff, but then if you run out of energy and you can't use your torch, it just kind of feels bad. I also think you're given too many augs to use at once. Because it's a PC game, you can activate and deactivate them using the F keys, but it's kind of fiddly activating a bunch of different augs, and in practice you're not likely to have a bunch on at once. I figure having 3 on at once is the most you should really want. It can be kind of weirdly realistically awkward remembering to turn your augs on and off as well. It's a bit like remembering to switch off the lights or turn off the oven before you leave home or something. You're just pressing F keys trying to reduce your energy consumption. This activating barrier actually causes a few problems, like there's an AUG that protects you from bullets a certain amount, and I'd love to use it, but it's kind of tricky to activate when you're in a firefight, whereas there's other AUGs that you can switch on at your leisure, and they're a lot more useful just because you can switch them on at your leisure.
Awesome.
It also feels a lot like you're rewarded for switching off the AUGs promptly after you use them. Like if I switch on the speed AUG and jump somewhere and then switch it off promptly, that saves me energy. So it almost feels like you ought to spend energy for individual jumps or a certain amount of running or something rather than just having it on like a light switch. The game also has an interesting gimmick where JC can take damage to different body parts, and that sounds interesting, right? Like if your arms are damaged, you shoot worse, and if your legs are destroyed, you crawl around. Wow, how interesting. But the problem there is that it kind of just encourages you to load a save game, like you spend a while crawling around, marveling at the fact that you're crawling around, but you don't really want to play the game like this, but your legs are stuck that way unless you can heal them. So if you heal them, it's like the legs gimmick is gone again, but if you don't heal them, the game kind of stops being fun. So it's an idea that sounds really interesting, but this idea of having your legs destroyed, I actually think is one of Deus Ex's biggest game design blunders. I really have to give credit to the level design in this game. I'm not a level design expert by any means, but I think the levels in Deus Ex really tick off a lot of boxes. They all feel like real places. There's apartment buildings, and secret underground labs, and an air base, and all these places that feel like actual places that have been built for a purpose, and they're not just video game environments for you to explore. I know Duke Nukem 3D was lauded for taking us away from the more abstract Doom-style levels and having levels that take place in real places like cinemas and stuff in the city, and Deus Ex really takes that and runs with it, and everywhere feels like an actual place. Apparently while they were making Quake, which is the first time the Doom team had a truly 3D engine, John Romero said that if you could build your levels in the Doom map editor, which was technically 2D, then you weren't doing it right, basically. And I think that applies nicely to Deus Ex as well. I get the feeling they decided they always wanted to have meaningful verticality to these levels. There's lots of places where you can climb ladders or just look up and see meaningful scenery, and they really make use of the fact that this game is 3D. You're never just kind of looking left and right, and that's it. And often the level layouts are just really fun. I remember landing on, slight spoilers, the roof at the Vandenberg airport base, and thinking, oh right, I can see a lot of the base from the roof here, and depending on what augs you have, you could jump down somewhere, you could fall in the water maybe, you can see things, you can snipe at things, you can shoot a rocket launcher at some robots, you could choose to do something else. There's multiple ways you can tackle the level from there, and you're given this cool overview of a lot of the territory at the start. So, like I say, it just ticks a lot of boxes. I realise sometimes the environments can look kind of dull and square and blocky, like there's definitely moments where you switch on your torch in the darkness and there's just kind of one big flat wall staring at you and you kind of walk around looking for things. Sometimes the levels can even look kind of beautiful, like the Knights Templar Cathedral looks really nice. It helps they had a bit of a creative leeway because the Knights Templar Cathedral is not a real place. but it looks kind of cool. Like there's times when you go into the VersaLife building or something, and some of these environments have a certain amount of aesthetics to them. They can be pretty neat. This game also has really great mission variety, so as well as just having a bunch of interesting environments, the things you'll be doing in them are varied and interesting too. I think there's about one section of the game that flags and I wouldn't really recommend, but the rest of the time there's just a bunch of fun, interesting missions that don't let up, basically. You might have a very talky section where you investigate things and try to find a secret passage. You might find a very fighty section where you've got to kill a bunch of goons or whatever. There's even a mission that takes place in an old chateau, and you just explore the chateau with your partner, and she talks about different things in there and memories she associates with the place, and it's kind of interesting, and the atmosphere is great, and everyone likes that level. And finally, despite the mission variety, I find I never got confused about what I was supposed to be doing, which is another principle I know Warren Spector held to while they were building this game. Now, you may have heard of the door problem in game development, and Deus Ex comes off pretty well if you judge it by its doors as well. You can open and close them, don't take that for granted. You can lockpick them, you can blow them up, NPCs can open them. There's actually a surprising amount you can do with doors. They're decently stylish doors. So, if you know, you know. Just don't take it for granted and marvel at the doors. Now, I think what really makes Deus Ex an interesting game is the long and detailed story, and there's a bunch of little details in the game that all kind of add up to the world, that they mention things in the first mission that you're only going to encounter much later in the game, so it's not like they're hiding things from you artificially. Like, it feels like a very cohesive world, the way they've written all the story bits. I think this game might have the least clash between story and gameplay of any game ever, because your character's video gamey abilities are explicitly justified in the game. You're a nano-augmented Superman, your upgrades and power-ups are justified, and the fact that you can do all these things is very important to the plot and everything. So it's kind of a world where you are a bit of a video game character, like you can eat food and it will heal you and all that stuff, but the fact that you can do all these things is important, and it really drives the plot. And this really closes the gap between gameplay and story, where often you have to ignore a whole bunch of stuff, and Deus Ex really solves something here. Another great thing the game achieves is that it really marries this approach of having a long, basically linear story, but still giving you bubbles of content where you can do things the way you want to do them. And that's no mean feat either. Like, this is a game that takes a linear story and still lets you do things your way so that you feel like your agency is being respected. I really think Deus Ex has solved a lot of game design problems. Now, Deus Ex is a very absorbing game. It's basically an immersive sim. It's supposed to be immersive, and this leads to one of my biggest nitpicks, if that makes any sense, and it's about the voice acting. Quite often, you can tell that the lines have been read out by people who've just been kind of given a piece of paper, and I've seen a podcast, I'll put a link in the description, that confirms that yes, people were reading their lines in isolation without somebody to act against. Also, you can have situations where people are reading the words, but the stress patterns are kind of off, and they may not understand the context of the line.
I did it! I did it!
Did anybody see?
No, Lewis Pan, you mean I did it, because you just stole some money from a newspaper stall, and now you're telling your crime boss about it. It's kind of like the difference between I'll be back, and I'll be back, and I'll be back. Stress patterns are real, and they do matter.
I'm going over to the Resistance. Why don't you join me? We can meet up in Hong Kong.
I was hoping you'd let me tag along.
Clearly he's supposed to be saying, I was hoping you'd let me tag along, as though he was expecting it, but instead he sounds kind of disappointed, as if JC just said that he won't be tagging along, even though he said he will. It's just another case of, like, not quite reading the words the right way. I was hoping you'd let me tag along. I'm also pretty sure the pronunciation of certain words is wrong, or at least inconsistent. I was kind of watching for Aquinas, and they're pretty inconsistent about this.
Aquinas.
That turned out to be for the Aquinas hub.
The Aquinas Protocol.
The Aquinas Protocol. It's taken over Aquinas.
If we destroy the Aquinas hub...
Because of the way they recorded the voice acting, you can get some mismatches between the performances when people are supposed to be talking to each other in the same room. And once you know, it's kind of easy to watch for. Like, I think maybe the worst case is this couple in Paris who are supposed to be arguing about their son.
First and in your heart you are a father. How dare you let politics...
I am a Frenchman.
You have abandoned your own son.
Perhaps I want to take the metro to see my mother, yes? Should I forget mother and my own freedom to travel so that Michel can have a small salary?
These are difficult times, I don't deny it.
He and his new friends murdered the Loridans simply because the old man ran a journal. Next time, he will come to murder us.
Anyway, most of the time, I think the voice acting in Deus Ex is perfectly fine, but just the fact that the game is so tightly made everywhere else can make weird voice acting instances stand out more, and once you know, you can't go back. To this day, I really love the way this game handles morality, which is a big feature of it. One of the first things that happens is your brother Paul runs up to you and tells you that your targets will be human beings.
This isn't a training exercise, JC. Your targets will be human beings. Keep that in mind.
I have found that more obviously evil things, like not going non-lethal and just shooting people or blowing them up, does make the game a bit easier, but I think that's deliberate as well and just ties into the idea that it's easier to do evil in the short term or something. There's a big emphasis on morality, but at the same time, the game doesn't have some light side, dark side, or Fallout-styled good and evil point system. Whether your actions are good or evil, you're just left with the consequences and forced to figure out what's right on your own. Perhaps Morpheus is right when he says that people like to be judged.
Individual desires judgment.
And just to make things even more complex, it's not like everybody in the game tells you that murder is bad or anything. So if you want to listen to the opinion of your fellow murderers, you can.
I have seen that he knows the procedure of a good offensive.
One of the reasons I'm glad Deus Ex does it this way without explicit good and evil points is that I think those can easily generate absurdities. I mean, there's the more obvious things like what happens if the game developers disagree with your own ethics and just how do you resolve that. But you can easily give things weird values that are kind of dubious as well. I know Fable was kind of famous for making it actually worthwhile killing your wife instead of divorcing her, because if she divorced you, you got a whole bunch of evil points, so divorcing your wife was apparently more evil than killing her, or killing a whole bunch of normal people. It was just all a bit weird.
The important thing is that you obey your conscience.
Despite Deus Ex not giving you very strong moral hints exactly, I still feel kind of moralizing sometimes, even on multiple playthroughs. Like, I don't like to shoot the dogs if I can help it. I prefer to tranquilize them. I mean, they mean no harm, they're just dogs doing their job. One thing I really like about the story is the way nobody exactly gets dehumanized. Even the basic Majestic 12 troopers, who really seem to be part of a pretty villainous organization, like they've got their black uniforms with red text on them and everything, even they are just about humanized, although I've got to admit I'm pretty happy to cut them down, and most people are too. But they have their moments.
If you see him, tall, dark hair, don't shoot. He's our child. I know, they all look the same in those uniforms.
Even characters who arguably aren't fully human anymore get humanized in this game. I know Gunther is kind of a Terminator-like guy. He may be based on Arnold himself, but even he, despite his abundance of mechanical parts, gets humanized in this game, and you learn quite a lot more about him before your big boss fight with him. Just the fact that characters can run away when they're damaged sometimes goes a long way to making them feel like real people as well, and making the situation more morally complex. And just for the record, yes, you can kill children in this game. Anyway, so Deus Ex still deserves its reputation as the best game ever made. It's got great varied gameplay, interesting environments, it marries a whole bunch of different gameplay elements, it successfully cuts down massively on gameplay and story segregation, it's got a long and interesting story, It handles morality in, I think, the best way that any video game ever has. If you're interested in game design, you might want to play it just to see how it solves a bunch of things, because I think it definitively solves a number of problems that other games still struggle with today. Now that I have mentioned it, someone is going to reinstall it. I have about 4 more Deus Ex videos planned on more esoteric topics, so if you want to make sure you see those, subscribe. Either way, I will see you guys in the next video. Ba-boom.